Okay, so this is the video about the good life with myself and Jacob Kress.
I
Um, that's Jake right there. First, we're going to discuss the basic needs and wants of humans, what we need to survive, and then whether or not we need more to fulfill a good life, a fulfilled life. So first, I'm going to go to Jake and ask him what he thinks some of the things humans need to live are.
um, food, shelter, um, loving, caring, the very basic needs for survival mainly.
Why would you, why would you say love and caring?
Because it's been proven again and again that in a human in like human interactions, we're creatures who long for like care and want. It helps us grow in a sense. So I consider it more a need than a want.
Okay, that makes sense. And then you said shelter and food.
Yeah, basically you need a place to sleep so you don't die, and you need food so you won't die.
Okay. What about water?
I consider like water and food like
And food?
same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. All right. So do you think that's like enough? Like, can you live? Well, actually, because you said that the love thing, can someone live a good life? Like, would you be satisfied with your life if you died and all you had was love, food, shelter?
I mean, part of me would be like okay, but I don't think it'd be living life to its fullest. It'd be
Hmm.
living almost like to a bare minimum at that point.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now we're gonna start talking because that actually got hung up very quickly. Um, about some of the philosophers' views on a good life. So a good life, like, oh, actually no, let's go into what you were saying about a full life, because that's what the philosophers are actually looking for. They're looking for a full life, not just a bare minimum. Like you survived a very long time and then you died.
Yeah,
That's not what they're looking for. And that doesn't seem like you're looking for either. So what would you say is living life to the fullest?
to its fullest. You have your basic needs taken care of, and you have leisure time and free time to like do things that you find entertaining, fun. Depends on the person. Like for me, it's sports, a couple nice things here and there, but not much. Just living life to its fullest potential almost.
So like doing what you want to do.
Yeah, doing what you want. Like once you have those basic needs taken care of, I believe that opens you up to a lot of possibilities to do what you want.
Um, so So you're saying doing some of the stuff that you want. So something that it's the good life extends past the bare minimum, which you said includes love, which we agree that makes sense, shelter and food. The good life is where you get what you desire, what you want to do in life.
Yeah, basically it opens you up. Like you're not always starving, you're not always looking for that. So living a good life would be, oh, I've got this all taken care of. I'm gonna go do something that I personally want to do, and that changes per person to person.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. So you're saying it's more of like a individual. It's the broad spectrum is that um, human needs to, kind of like follow their dreams, like a recurring story we hear throughout a lot of
Mhm.
literature and shows and stuff like that. Um, that's what you're kind of saying, like follow your dreams, and that. So are you saying that should every human have those base needs satisfied, like love, shelter, food?
If they want to live life to the fullest, yes, they need those very basic needs satisfied because you can't really pursue a happy life if you're always worrying, oh, where am I going to sleep tonight? What am I going to eat?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Um, have you took psychology, right?
I've taken intro psych and abnormal psych, yes.
I am not currently familiar because I didn't think we were going to go down this route, but this actually I think is a good thing to bring up. Are you familiar with the pyramid that one? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I actually learned it in my high school morality class.
Like the pyramid of something or other, and then like you
Higher
can't
needs
get
and stuff. Yeah.
you can't get to the next level until you fulfill
Hmm.
food, shelter, love. Once you get there, next level, and then I think that. Do you know what the psychologist's name was off the top of your head?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I just remember that top tier is like self fulfillment. Well,
Yeah, yeah, like the end. I think he listed off some really influential figures in history that he believes got all of those needs met so that
mhm,
they could do the change that they did throughout history.
yeah. I had my
I think
notebook
so.
here. I have like the pyramid and everything with the name of it. So
So do you think your like idea of the good life kind of follows that pyramid scheme?
yeah, in a sense, just because I've talked about that pyramid scheme like before and stuff, and like the
Hmm.
very basic needs, it does make sense because you're driven biologically to a certain point to drive to seek out these like very basic things. But then
Right.
what makes us different is we can think beyond that, like to
And keep
fill
going.
something personally.
Cool. All right, that makes sense. Um, all right, so let me talk about. Jesus, this is going a lot quicker than I anticipated. We're just like getting through things. All right, so let's talk about some of the ancient philosophers' takes on the good life. So one of them is kind of similar to yours. They're the Epicureans. They're from most of these are from Greece, and they thought that the good life is basically pleasure, and the like epitome of the good life is life without any pain.
Mhm.
So how do you feel about that? Do you think that's true? Do you think pain is actually like part of life
Well,
and necessary, or
it's tough to see like pain as like part of good life, like when you think of it like how they are, where good life is pleasurable, it's fun, it's like it's all these higher things, and pain is kind of like the opposite of that.
right?
But if you think of it in more in like a different sense, coming from a different point of view, you grow from pain. Pain tells you when something doesn't work, and if you keep doing something that doesn't work, you're not going to enjoy yourself. So pain, in a sense, can be good. It's not great, but it also helps like direct a life along kind
Hmm. So like in your vision of like the good life, where you've met all your needs, so you're not worrying about those, and then you're trying your dreams. So I know one of the things you really like is ski, or not ski, snowboarding.
of. Hmm.
So say that was someone's thing. That's one of the things that somebody wants to pursue, and they were just horrible at it. Like they kept falling down and getting hurt. So oh, and then they just keep getting better as they go along. Like I know from skiing anyway. Like every time I ski, I get better. I'm sure it eventually like flattens out, but once you snowboard enough, you're not gonna fall as much. Do you think you enjoy it more then, or do you think you enjoy the struggle?
I think it's a little of both because like I'm a fairly experienced snowboarder at this point. I'm on medium to hard courses at this point as almost like a regular, and I like pushing myself to that limit, going how far can I go before I fall and I get hurt. And when you fall and get hurt, it's kind of like a cue. Okay, don't do that again, and you learn from it. So the pain and the struggle kind of does go with the the enjoyment of hitting that like plateau and saying, okay, I can do it. They're both pleasurable in a sense.
Hmm. Um, so would your good life? So do you think they're kind of like they're getting to a good point, the Epicureans? Like they're kind of understanding, but the idea of the absence of pain kind of takes out something that's kind of like necessary for life.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like they're on the right track with the whole pleasurable thing. So that kind of has to do with like, oh, I'm pursuing something I want to do.
Right.
I do think that like the absence of pain thing. Yeah, it sounds ideal. Like it sounds ideally great, but when you start thinking about it, it's like, well, then it's kind of gonna get bland.
Yeah, I mean, think about it in terms of, let's bring in some superheroes here because we both like that. Like, the Hulk doesn't feel that much pain, and he can just bust through something. If someone else could just do that, there'd be so much mayhem, and like, sure, they got pleasure out of doing whatever, like maybe stealing from a bank, but that was only because they couldn't feel pain. That would be
Yeah.
ridiculous. Although I don't think they're not trying to, like, say, that someone who can, there's some people who can't physically feel pain.
Hmm.
And there's like sociopaths who don't feel guilt.
Yeah. I think
Um,
what they're getting at is more like a physical pain, like a life without having to worry about breaking a bone or hurting
well, I
yourself.
think I think they're actually trying to do it broader than that, like psychological pain, like worrying
Mm.
about something, just because of the way that pleasure. Like if you think about it, no, No, think about it this way. Like if you're doing an assignment for one of your courses and you get bored, and then you go and it's due like the next day, but then you go watch a video or play a game. In the back of your mind, you're thinking, "Oh wait, I still got to do this."
Hmm.
So the pleasure you're getting from the game or the activity, watching the show, whatever you're doing, is kind of lessened because you're thinking of this thing in the back of your head. And it might not
Yeah.
be in the forefront, like it might just be back there,
Hmm.
but when you finish it, you might be like, "Okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that." And I think that
Yeah.
what they're trying to get at is something more similar to that, where you get rid of that. But I don't know if that's a good idea because I think you seem to agree with me is the pain is a really important part of growing and understanding. All right, I can get more pleasure in the long term if I take this pain now and just get it over with.
Hmm.
So if I can somehow get rid of all the pain, I can get more pleasure.
Yeah, because
Or
at the
not get
end,
rid of all the pain, but like think of the pain as something I need to do to gain pleasure instead of trying to dismiss it altogether.
yeah, because like at the end of all that pain, you're gonna become that much better of an individual and probably have more pleasure than you would have if you did it without pain.
That brings me into another point about the Epicureans. They believe that there is no like level of pleasure. It's
Mm.
more you just get different types of pleasure. Like if you watch a show and you really like the drama that's going on, and then you watch another comedy show, you're gonna enjoy the comedy. And the pleasure you get from each one of those things is different. Or if you're like snowboarding, like we were saying earlier,
Yeah.
it's a thrill, it's a different type of pleasure. And um, so I don't know what I was going with that because I just forgot what you were saying. Um, but so they're trying to say that there's no like greater pleasure. There's only pleasure. So once you get to the point that pleasure is there is only pleasure, then you have relinquished pain and you have gained the most pleasure you're ever going to get. So
Okay. Yeah.
do you think pleasure is more on a sliding scale? That's what I need to get back to.
All
Do you
right.
think there is like a sliding scale of pleasure?
I think yeah, like I think there are different pleasures and stuff, but there's also like different levels within those because like
Hmm.
you can kind of like like if going on the show analogy, you can kind of like the show because of the drama, then you could really like a show because of the drama. So like
Yeah.
there's different levels within each different type, but yeah, like the pleasure from watching a drama is different from the pleasure of snowboarding or something.
Right. Um, well, to take off on that, another thing is, when you're reading a story or you're watching a show, the other thing I've found is your emotional investment in the show is another thing. Like if you're watching a show like a comedy and you're just getting laughs, great. You're laughing. That's this much. If you have watched a show for 4 seasons and you really love the characters and the characters do something that's hilarious, that's part of their character that's been building up for so long, then your amount of pleasure at that joke, like, would it just be so much higher than someone who just started watching. And I think I've actually noticed that this semester with all of us living here. One of us is watching a comedy and none of us know what's going on, and the one who's watched it the longest laughs a lot longer than the person who hasn't.
Yeah.
Which would assume that they actually gain more pleasure than we do because of their, like we were saying before, like you need to keep going at something to gain more pleasure from it. So I think we're on the right ball here.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. Also has to. I see that as almost going back into like the whole needs area. 'Cause remember how I said one of the needs is to love and have like compassion for something.
Yeah,
What tends to happen in a lot of shows and stuff, people connect to certain characters and stuff, and it becomes an emotional attachment to that character because, oh, this character is kind of representing what I went through with something.
yeah,
So when something funny happens, it's not only a want that you want to be like pleasure and stuff, it's also that need that's being fulfilled at that point.
yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, especially like some characters. I think you've said you're related to a couple that if they feel something or they've done something that you did and they do something that's like greater or um like something you didn't expect them to do at the beginning of the show, but you start to connect to them. Then when they do something that's maybe not as glamorous, but still like on a personal level for the character, and if you did something like that, you would feel proud, that you actually feel proud. Like I've noticed that
Yeah,
when I've been watching shows and I've connected to a character, when I see them do something that if I had done that, I would be proud, I actually feel that. Which I think that's totally what you were saying earlier about, or that totally relates to what you were saying earlier about getting into the like emotional level as a need, not just a want.
yeah.
Um, I really wish Google Hangouts had a timer for how long we've been talking, but it doesn't. So that's just. So you think we're all set on the Epicureans?
Yeah,
Anything else to say?
I think I'm good. I think we can move on.
All right. So these are my favorite people. And we're going to talk about these people next, and they're the cynics. The cynics believe that the good life is basically happiness, just being happy. Like, what could go wrong with that? And they
Mhm.
also believe that the basis of the happiness is free will, your ability to do whatever you feel is necessary. Um, I think they obviously put some restrictions on that, like there's killing is probably not sanctioned as well.
Kind of frowned upon in some
Yeah, probably
societies.
frowned upon, but in general, it's just living yourself. And one of the things they were famous for is that they didn't believe. Do you know about Greece and how it was in city states?
Yep.
Yeah, so basically each city was its own state, and everybody was extremely loyal to that, and that's kind of why they fell apart whenever someone attacked them because they didn't rally together because of all their ridiculous differences. Um, and the cynics were people who just kind of walked around, just like, look, we don't care, we can do what we want. And they kind of had this like laissez-faire attitude about life. One of the things I read for this interview and for my class was there's a cynic dialogue between a cynic and this some rich guy in one of the city states, and the cynic is just wearing a shirt, a cape, no shoes, and some pants. And the rich guy says to him, "What are you doing? Like, don't you want to live in like a house, get some shoes?" And the cynic responds, "No, my feet are built for walking. That's kind of why they're made. I can keep just fine warm with the clothes on my back and my cape. So there's no reason for me to need anything else." So they kind of go above that in sense that like if you wanted something else, if part of your free will you wanted something else, more than that, then you can. But you can also have this really simple life if that's what you want to do. So what do you think in terms of that?
I think that's a lot like how a lot of people today try to live. At least they want to be. I think everyone's goal in life is to kind of be happy with where they are and stuff.
Hmm.
And like I said at the beginning, happiness is different for each and every person. So,
Right.
like you said, like the cynic, he's happy with just standing around in his cape and no shoes, kind of like a couple people on this campus. But some other people are probably like, I want a house, I want this. But it's still everyone wants to be happy. Just everyone's level of happiness is just different.
Hmm.
Like you're happy with programming. I'm happy with doing experiments in the chem lab.
Yeah. Yeah, they're an interesting case because it's really hard to argue with that.
Yeah.
Because basically all they say is, look, live a good life.
Mhm.
But they also take the needs versus wants thing very seriously. So if you want something that's not necessary to your survival, then there's no need for it. It should not really exist. And that's one of the things the cynic who was talking to the rich man, I forget their names. They had names in the dialogue I read, I forget they were. Um, the rich man, he told the rich man, there's no reason to have a house because I don't need one. I physically do not need a shelter this big or this lavish to support me. So you were just saying some people might want a house, but do they need the house? And that's what we're currently working off of is you need shelter,
Mhm.
but the shelter can be, whatever you have. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
like people always assume, especially when you get taught this, and I don't know when you got taught this, but I think I got taught this in like middle school or elementary school. They start like forcing the idea of needs versus wants, and you automatically assume shelter means house because that's where most people grow up in nowadays, and it always like a house seems secure and safe. But if you can. Maybe not in New England because of the ridiculous amount of winter and random weather we have, but in some places it'd be perfectly fine to just live outside most of the year.
Yeah, I mean, you do have some people like just the definition of house itself is different. I mean, if you're in a Native American tribe, that's something like a teepee house,
Hmm.
and that's all you need. It goes to your definition of need, and especially where you are, depending on what you have. Like a traditional house in New England is going to be vastly different from a traditional house somewhere on the equator.
Right. So, do you think? It seems to me, and I could be wrong, that the cynics believe that some things that we consider needs today were not needs back then. And do you think, like we just said that, or we said earlier in this discussion that love and family is part of um, your needs, not your wants. And part of a family is it's easier to secure them in a house, defend them, whatever. Obviously, I'm going like a little bit farther than we probably normally would in this time period, but that's kind of what a house was originally built for. It's protection from wild animals, other people, whatever. So do you think now that if Cynic was alive today and they still had the same beliefs that there's this need versus wants, do you think that they would agree with us that we need a house or a teepee or some sort of shelter instead of just, or do you think if like you were saying like if we lived on the equator, there's no need for a like $1 million mansion to live on, where in the equator you can just have like a nice place to get out of the shade.
I think they would disagree with a lot of the mansions you see now. Like you see some of these like superstars and whatever. They put these like ginormous houses that look like honestly a campus.
Yeah,
And like I think they would agree with a basic house because yeah, there's still that need to defend because not everyone's a nice person. There's still that need to have your family there. There's a need to keep someone like everyone together. You can store food there, so it does go back to those needs eventually. They would criticize the person with the big house, saying you don't need that.
yeah. Hold on 1 second. Where is it? Stupid wireless headset. All right. Yeah. So you think they would agree with the changing times?
Yeah,
And especially the other thing is, I mean, the Cynics were only existed in Greece, and I personally have never been to Greece, and I don't know what the living situation or the climate is there. So it might have been perfectly fine to not have any sort of house. But I mean, I think, and like you brought up Native Americans, and they lived pretty well off very small scale houses, their teepees basically, and they were people known for their ability to just live off the land. I feel like they embodied what the cynicism stands for
yeah.
in terms of just getting what they needed and nothing else from
They
the environment.
they did live off the land, and one big thing with them was technically they didn't. Yeah, they had a place to sleep and whatever, but they did not. They didn't own. No one owned land. You shared the land, so
Yeah,
that there wasn't actually like, oh, I have a house. No, it's this is where I'm sleeping at the moment.
right. Well, I mean, I think they owned the structure, the teepee,
Oh yeah, that's about it. It's
but
like
the teepee just moves around, and that was
yeah,
one of the things about
TV
them. They
goes
just
with
moved
them.
around. Um, what was I gonna say? Something about something. Um, the the question is, do we still need like so we have like let's talk about the American household now, or we can even talk about this school. So yeah, let's talk about the school because we've been talking about this for a couple days now, in private conversations. Um, right now, like so we live in a townhouse, so we have electricity, heating, internet, um, refrigerator, sink, cabinets, shower, toilets. Now, do we need all of those things? Do you think?
Not necessarily need all of them. Yeah, we kind of do need a fridge, a stove, a place to go to the bathroom, stuff like that. The fridge and stove for food purposes because we need food. the bathroom for cleanliness and health. But like the internet, not necessarily a need. You need it at this campus, but it's more of a want. We want to be able to access knowledge. Electricity, you need. It's kind of need slash want because we need it because of our other needs. But it's more of you can survive without electricity. Like this morning, we had to deal with a power outage.
Right, yeah. Um, Stupid power cord, hold on. Okay. Hopefully that stays there this time. Okay, so, yeah, so you're saying the internet is a need, and then electricity is a need because of the other things we need.
Yeah.
Um, but, so, in today's society, we need to get, so like you said, so we need refrigerators for food. We need toilets to get rid of our waste,
Mm-hmm.
because for cleanliness and other reasons that could be disastrous. Um, and we need electricity to run all these things. And in today's society, all that stuff costs money. Money when you originally purchased the item, and then electricity you're constantly paying for. So my question is, how do we get the money?
It comes to that whole aspect of you want to live to be happy. What are you happiest doing, and can you make money from it? Like you want to get into computer science things. That's how you're going to pay for your living expenses. I'm going to get into chemistry things because it's something we enjoy doing. It's a want for us to want to do this. We could go get a full-time job right down at Mickey D's and work there. We wouldn't be happy. We wouldn't make a lot of money. We wouldn't be living life to its fullest still. But if we pursue what we want to do, we're it's like the expression work every day of your life with oh, what is it exactly? Um,
I know which one you're talking about. I'm gonna
yeah,
try to
like
think of it too.
the one that's basically like never work an hour a day doing the job you love.
So I thought it was like have a job your like whole life, but never work a
Never work a
day.
day. That's it. Yep.
Something like that. Yeah, it was something like you need to have a job, but make sure it's doing something you enjoy.
Yeah, because then it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. Um, but to get jobs, like, so you said, so we've established that we need jobs,
Hmm.
and the best opportunity is to have a job that you enjoy, because that just fulfills like the good life that we're trying to get to. Um, but so now we need a job, but how do we get the job?
That's where our society is a bit different. We highly value education now, so you kind of have to go through that route to get the jobs you do want.
Hmm.
So yes, there's still skilled jobs. Some people are happy doing it. One of my best friends from home is actually a mechanic. He loves doing what he does. Did it right out of high school. Makes pretty good money. Just I like working on cars, but I could never do that for a living.
Yeah. Why won't you stay in? That came out as I was. Ugh, stupid thing. All right. No. So like you can be happy doing a lot of jobs, but to get the job, I feel like the internet is a very good place to try and find one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, but on the other hand, it's not. I guess you're right because you're saying it's a want, and getting the job that you need to survive is also a want.
hmm
Or getting a job that you enjoy is a want, not
want.
necessarily a need.
Yeah.
Because you can still fulfill your life outside of your job.
hmm
Um, so yeah, I guess that makes sense. So I think yeah, I think the internet would be a want. I mean, it's a very tantalizing want
It's a very
because
good
of
want.
the
I
ridiculous
struggle
amount of
without
things
it.
you can do with it. But yeah, that makes sense. And so I think the cynics. I'm trying to end the cynics here. Um, I don't know if the cynics would agree on a lot of the things we have because there's the ability to, like the refrigerator and the plumbing,
Hmm.
the indoor plumbing, I should say. There's the ability to do that. There's the ability to still get the same result as plumbing. You just need to, be a little bit more It's not as easy as indoor plumbing.
Yeah.
And then electricity, the other thing is, don't have food that requires it. Or like if you just had like a little garden in your backyard, or there's a local garden that everyone tends to and everyone can take from, and then you just basically take the fresh vegetables and you keep them. I mean, people survived for thousands of years without refrigerators,
Yeah.
so there's probably some ways to make it work.
Yeah. There are ways to make it work. Just now, it's more commonplace just to get your food in one time a week and store it.
Well, so yes, the question is that necessary though? Or is that something that we want because of its ridiculous convenience? Before you'd have to go to, whatever, some sort of storehouse to grab the ingredients you want, or buy them every day in the market before
I
you
think
need to buy that dinner.
Yeah, I think it just fades into this like kind of gray area between wants and needs because you need food. There's no downing
Right,
the
yes, I think we've established that.
yeah. There's
Food is need.
the whole do you need it in a refrigerator ready to use? Maybe not completely so, but in today's society you kind of do. In past, yeah, you could have a little garden. I gardened over the summer. Most of my fresh I cook with a lot of fresh foods and stuff. It's just like I'm not gonna go out and oh I want a hamburger for dinner. I'll be right back. I gotta go out into the farm. But not everyone has farms anymore.
Right, yeah. Well, that can get us into a whole nother argument about vegetarianism and
Yeah,
things. So we're not. I'm not going to go into that.
we'll avoid
But
that one.
yeah, because that could be a whole nother video, or multiple videos,
Yeah,
arguing whether or not that's the thing to do. But see, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like we as a society would argue that what we have in terms of refrigerators and electricity and indoor plumbing is a need for us. But I also feel like if we really looked in deep, we could see that yeah, it's convenient. Yeah, it's awesome to be able to, walk down to a fast food restaurant and grab something that was cut up in Kansas or something, um, or another farm state. I really hope he's not from Kansas. I don't think he is, because if he is, then I probably just insulted him.
oops.
Yeah, but if we really looked into it, we would see that it's not absolutely necessary. Like, we could live similarly to how Native Americans lived. I mean, we might need more than teepees, just because just winters have gotten worse. There's a ridiculous amount than there was before. Um, Also, if we need to trade, money and jobs, we might need some of those buildings, and then what's going to
Mhm.
power that? But I feel like if we really looked, we could see that we could still have, a really good existence without, refrigerators.
Yeah,
Do you think that? Do you think that makes sense? Like, if you, I know, like, if you, obviously, it's going to be hard to, kill a cow or whatever you wanted to eat that night and then eat it. But there were worries. I mean, obviously, it weren't as tasty, depending on, I mean, I'm not really a meat connoisseur, but I feel like if it's been, I think they used like salt or something to keep them like from diseased for a while. And
well,
that
it's like
probably
jerky.
didn't taste that good when you ate it.
It's like I said, it's how jerky was actually invented. They used to dry and salt meats just to kind of keep them overnight. And yeah, it's a good snack. It's not the best meal in the world when you store it like that, but
Yeah.
it's still okay.
No, that's the thing. So I feel like if we didn't need to store it, like you said, you're not going to go into your backyard and kill whatever animal you wanted to eat that night. But I mean, there's a lot of people, even in like the colonial period, and probably a little bit later. You didn't go to kill something. You went to a butcher who has those things, killed them for you, and then gave you the meat.
Yeah.
And then you could eat it that night, and they'd be responsible for storing it. So maybe they'd have a refrigerator, or maybe they just had a better like they just had animals, and then when someone requested something, they're like, all right.
Mhm.
Or maybe maybe more of a like a collective thing, like everybody gets meat. Not trying to argue for communism here, but you know what I'm saying? Like something where, farmers or whatever, they get all their food together and they give it out. Like the family tries to find out, the family or the person, whoever, tries to find out how much they need. They know how much they need and they ask for it, and that's what they get.
Yeah.
Instead of, like in college, what we do is we'll go to the dining hall, maybe eat something, maybe not. Then at 12 o'clock at night, decide to go out and get something else. Um, like that's convenient, but it's also, is it the best
Yeah.
policy, and is that something that we want because it's awesome?
It's more. I think at college it turns more to a want because we like to procrastinate a lot, and the best
Yeah,
way to procrastinate is food usually, or the idea of hey, let's go walk somewhere and get food.
right.
Beats
Yeah,
writing this paper.
yeah. All right, so let's just. This is a really good topic, and it all stemmed from the cynics. So, but I do want to close it sooner rather than later. So I think, and tell me if you agree with me. And I think we did this before, and then we got off on a tangent of keep going to see what the cynics would agree on. But so the cynics, they would probably either, I think they would either disagree or like disagree strongly with some of our usage, like electricity. Um, and because the other thing is, there's no reason. Like I think they would say, why are you staying up past sundown? Get up at the break of dawn, stay awake, go to sleep. What more do you want? Um, and that's one of the main reasons we have light, electricity. Um, and I think they'd also possibly strongly disagree with refrigerators because there is a system in which we would not need them, which would be less resource intensive, and it wouldn't have the convenience that we have now. But I think they would label that convenience as a need, not a want. So they would be like whatever, or they would. So they'd either strongly disagree with those points, or they would be somewhat understanding of the situation because I think we live in a lot more fast-paced society, and whether or not that's need or want based, I'm not quite sure, and we can go into that if you want. Um, if it's want based, and if they think it's want based, then they might be more acceptable to having the convenience of being able to go grab something really quickly before you had to go do this workout or you had to go to this job or whatever you had to go to. Um, yeah, so I think they'd either strongly disagree or they might be able to see the reasons that you were trying to say that like we
Yeah.
live in a different time and the different time requires more uh, from us than the time they were living in. So what do you think?
I think you get probably a bit of both, just like with anything. I don't think it'd be like a uniform response. I think some would be. I think you'd get like neo cynics and I can't remember like a classical cynic. So you probably have people who are like, oh, it's the adaptation of the times. This is how it goes, and then you have those very traditional orthodox. That's what I said before. Orthodox
Oh,
cynics
sorry.
who would be like very no. This is all just extremely want based. This isn't basic needs and stuff. So I think you would get like that kind of that like
Hmm.
polarization between the
Yeah,
two.
you get some that had both sides of the story. That makes sense. Yeah, but it'd be really interesting to see whether or not if an actual cynic came back, what he would say.
Mm.
All right, so I think we wrapped with the cynics. I think the cynics we agreed with them for the most part.
Yeah.
They don't seem to have anything wrong. The only thing we disagree with them is the like you're saying the Orthodox cynics, which is probably what most of the Greek ones were. Um, we would probably disagree with them. Well, actually, I'd probably agree with them in
Mm.
terms of the refrigerator, which is the main example I'm using because that's the only one we really brought up. So the refrigerator situation and the electricity. I would agree with the Orthodox cynics, just because I would be able to see where they're coming from and see that there is like, yeah, it's great to be able to do all these things so quickly and just run in, grab something, run out. But I don't think that's necessary for our survival
Yeah,
and for like our lives to be good lives. And so, which side would you do you think you would take?
I that's tough for me. Like, yeah, I'm looking at it as, oh, technically it's not a need. So I mean, like with the Orthodox on that side, but that's not how I live. I live how almost like a neo cynic would see it, where this is the society I live in. It's not necessarily a need, but it's a strong want in the society, so I follow it. So I think I'd side more with a neo, like a neo cynic kind of.
Hmm. Oh, I like what you were saying. It's not a need, but it's a really strong want.
Yeah,
Um, and I think that's part of it. And I mean, I think the cynics and the Orthodox ones would just say, look, it doesn't matter what if everybody's if they knew this adage, they'd probably say it. If everyone jumps off the bridge and that's their want, you don't do it too.
yeah,
um, I think that's a pretty good thing to like throw in there, but uh, they wouldn't, or the new cynics would kind of just brush that off and say, look, if we take into account, the fast-paced society, I mean, there's what, like 3 or 4 billion people in the world now.
I think it's closer to like 7, 8 billion.
Okay, yeah, I was off. Like, yeah, so like double that. And like if you're searching for a job, which we discussed earlier, is like you need a job, whatever it is, to pay for all of your other needs, make sure they're satisfied, and then if you have a family, you need to help satisfy your family needs too, which requires a higher paying job. But then you're fighting with, I mean, it's not the whole population because a lot of them are kids or only adults, so probably like 2 billion people to find a job that works for you, that's in the location that you may or may not want. Um, well, that's the other thing when we didn't really discuss the location. We can come back to that later if we want.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I think I like how you phrased it. I like how you phrased it. I think I would side with the Orthodox, and you would be. I think a lot of people would be in your situation. Like
yeah,
they would see the logic. They'd be like, okay, you make sense, Orthodox cynics, but kind of like how I'm living.
yeah,
And the other thing is, and I think the Orthodox cynics might address this issue, and it'd be interesting to see if this actually happened somehow. What they would say is, if we tried to revert our society to the Orthodox cynics version of the good life and how we should be living, that would take a lot of time and
yeah.
energy and money um, and I'd wonder if they would say, and we should actually discuss this before we close on the cynics, because now I'm kind of interested in it. If the cynics would, so say it takes, like think about it, if or how long it takes to accomplish their goals, like get to the point where we can live similarly to how Native Americans live, because I really think that's like kind of what they exemplified. You live with nature, you do what you need to do, no more, no less. Um, and right now in our society, like we have huge sky rises that house thousands of people, and cities that house millions, and now they need to be spread out so they don't destroy all the resources. um, so that would be interesting to see how a cynic would cope with that.
Yeah.
You know what I
It's
mean?
it's a really interesting topic because we actually talked about this back. This may have been, I don't know if it was my morality class in high school or it may have been my fourth year religion class, that we were talking about how in like today's society, in order to like live like that, like we're approaching a point where the earth really can't support everyone to live like that. That's why like the society we have now, it's like specialized in a way that makes it work. But if you were to tell everyone, okay, now everyone has to farm, we start running out of land and resources very quickly.
Well, the question would be, because right now, and I mean I don't really know the exact numbers, but I would assume there's a lot of land that isn't being used for things. And another thing is so right now what we do is we make food in one of the states and then or a lot of food in one state and then that state sends food to this other state instead of that state making food. And I think it would make sense, and this is one of the things they would say is why if you need to, and this is kind of like an eco. I feel like they're really sad with the eco-friendly people,
Yeah.
and not based on good for the environment. They just say like, why do you need to do this? This makes no sense. It makes more sense to be near it. So if you're shipping somewhere from Kansas to Massachusetts for whatever reason, I really don't know where everything comes from. They would say, why are you living in Massachusetts if it can't provide you the thing you need? You should live in Kansas.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes into like the location thing that I skirted around because I think we'd get into too long of a debate about location. And then yeah, like so say because you were saying, what'd you say? Kill a chicken earlier?
It'd kill a cow. It's just
Yeah,
random farm
kill some
animal.
sort of meat.
Yeah.
And if you live in a state like I don't know Alaska where that might not be very possible to get cow because of the way their land is, then the whole population of Alaska, if that's what they want, if that's what they need, then they would go to another state. Now that state has more people than it had before, and then other states might go there.
Yeah.
And
It
then you
becomes,
get to the point that you were talking about,
yeah.
oversaturation of whichever resource you decide to take up.
Mhm. It becomes an argument of what if on top of what if on top of what if at that
Yeah.
point.
And that's the only thing. Like obviously, I mean, I don't think the cynics were the best respected group back in the ancient times because of how they looked and stuff like that. But the other thing is, like, even now, like, if someone came up and started spewing ideas like that, which is kind of what the environmentalist groups are doing, people are just disregarding it because it's what if, like you were saying, what if on what if, on what if, and you also, even if everything goes like according to plan, you don't know how ratios are going to go. You don't know if families are going to start, overpopulating that
Mhm.
area. If they start having more kids, and how is the thing going to support that, or the environment supposed to support that? And then also, a lot of people nowadays get attached to where they grew up, and that's where they want to live or whatever. If we have more and more people doing that, then that one area is going to have less and less resources. And normally, and this is what Native Americans, I'm pretty sure from the research I've done on them, do is when they ran out of resources, which they would go to another location,
Yeah.
and they are an extremely mobile group of people. Where we are much more, and this might be a reason that the cynics would also disagree with houses, and why they disagreed with houses back then actually, is the idea of if I'm sitting down in one place, eventually I might run out of resources, and if I do, that's on me to move. But if I don't move, then I'm going to start taking resources from other locations that are also trying to support their local ecosystem.
Yeah.
And like I mean, this isn't true now because we're a lot better at it in terms of like preserving food. I mean, back in the day, if you're sending food from Britain to America, probably a third of it's dead by the time, like gone, not usable. And I think that's one of the things that they're trying to talk about. Why are you wasting all this food when you should just be, it should be to your specific country.
Yeah.
This has to be an interesting thing to look at in terms of um, numbers to see if it's viable to do in certain places. But that's for another thing. So I think we wrapped up the cynics. That was
That
much
was a good
better
one.
than the other one in terms of how long it took us to get through. And we keep doing things, or we kept talking about it. So we've decided we agree with them in terms of happiness. That's totally what you're going
Yeah.
for the good life, and that it's totally based on free will. I mean, that's basically what you said at the beginning. Like, it's what you want to do, and it's above just getting what you need, which is the argument we've had with them. Is we don't we kind of agree. I think both of us, like you said, you're a little bit iffy on the needs versus wants in terms of like you agree with them, you understand where they're coming from, but some of the wants you're still thinking like it's so embedded in the society
It's almost basically
that
an
it's almost a need, and therefore I would take it where I think a cynic would say, even if it's, you know, 99% of the population uses it and it's a want.
yeah.
Like to give, I forget what you were saying. What were we saying was the one that you were saying that we needed? Was it refrigerating?
Yeah, that was the one like we were arguing for.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna switch to another one. Like if 99% of the world had an iPhone S, 4S, for whatever how much money it costs, or 6S, let's say 6S because it hasn't come out yet. It could be astronomical in price. Um, I think it's like, and we honestly, like, we would say, yeah, it's not necessary for
No,
anybody to have
no.
that. That's completely a want. Even if 99% of the population bought it, which is what I think what they would try to do to dissuade you from following that course of action. But aside from that, so we both agree that that's kind of what we do. It's just the need versus wants is still iffy in terms of our modern culture.
Hmm.
So let's talk about the next one. The next one I want to talk about is the skeptics. The skeptics, their idea, there was one skeptic, and I believe his name was. Do I have it here? Uh, Pyrrho. He was the first skeptic, and what he did was he went to a foreign country and saw some naked philosophers. Now I'm glad you didn't laugh, but the naked philosophers basically just lived their lives. Um, and he came back to Greece after that, and he was said to himself, "I don't really know the truth." And this is the one I really want to talk to you about because you're a science major. Um, so he eventually his version of skepticism is the acceptance that he will never know the truth. Therefore, there is no reason to pursue it, and I should just live my life based on what I see and perceive. Because trying to go, and I think we actually talked about this the other night. You were saying philosophy goes a lot deeper than science, or theoretical science kind of touches on
Yeah.
philosophy in terms of going above and beyond, trying to find the truth.
Hmm.
And that's what he says. Look, it's not possible. We're not going to actually do it. So just kind of like go with what you see and feel. Like he says, you shouldn't trust your senses because they can. Like there's, he says somewhat contradictory themes from what I read. He says you can trust your senses, but also you can't because you don't know it's truly there.
Yeah. I can
Uh,
I can
Go on.
kind of see it just because like as a scientist we're taught to observe things and we observe things that follow certain patterns. We create laws that follow these patterns. But the theoreticians, the revolutionary scientists have the ability to say, I'm not accepting what we think is true. And then they try to propose an idea that fits something else. Newton was like that. He wondered, why does the apple fall? And then once he figured that out, he was like, it's the same force that makes the planets rotate. And that was revolutionary at the time. People thought he was a crazy guy. And he's like, no, look, math, which is kind of another, it's kind of, you have to have belief that mathematical things work, is like, it works. You create a whole form of math for it. The field in it now is string theory. There's this crazy revolutionary mathematical proof that shows that the universe can exist in I think it's 11 dimensions and something, but it's more it does lie more into philosophy than science because you can't test it. Science is all about yeah, I can see certain things and then I'm going to go out and test it and come back with proof that this may not be the truth, but it's the best understanding for what I have.
Yeah, I think like what you just said was actually perfectly outlines what I think Pyrrho was trying to get at. I could be wrong. I could have been interpreting this like everything I read on him like completely wrong. But I think what he was trying to say is exactly what you're saying is theoretical physics, like string theory. He he was one of the people who tried to do that, And he found because you never get the true answer, and I mean one of the other things that we can't really find out is like the past. Like we don't
Mm.
know what actually happened. We don't know what the Big Bang happened. Whatever. He's the kind of guy who just would say, you know what, or he became the kind of person who would just say, you know what, I don't care. I'm not gonna know. It would be cool if I did know, but I'm not gonna know, so I'm not gonna worry about it. Um, and he is. I feel like he would be supportive, like you were saying, of science, where you're not obsessing about the truth. You're saying I can provide you with these things based on my, what I've felt, what I've touched, what I've
Yeah,
saw. Jeez, God, I hope I don't get like marked off for grammar. Um, and you propose something, and then you defend it, or you say, all right, or you get completely shot down. You realize that you were completely wrong. Um, and I think that's kind of what he was going like. You're not worrying about the truth, so you're still trying to get at something,
yeah,
but you're not really worrying whether or not it's true. It's just you believe it to be true.
yeah.
You know what I mean,
I
like
think
people go ahead.
honest, where he would disagree, I believe, is the field of science that's about okay, because if I run an experiment and what I think was right turns out to be wrong, I don't just say, okay, I'm not going to know. I go, how does this work? What is the truth behind it? And then again, we don't know if that's the truth. Like for now, we accept it as the truth. In the future, we could be completely wrong. People used to think the Earth was the center of the universe. We now know that is wrong.
I think, yeah, I think you make a good point, but I think he would. I think it's the definition of truth that he had and you're using in your example is a little bit different. Like I think what he was trying to say is absolute truth.
Mm.
And I think this is the problem with the skeptics is they're skeptics. They basically don't believe a lot of things. Um, so I think one of the main things that people don't like about them is they profess to not know anything about the world, and that you should not like don't worry about the truth. But in the fact that they're arguing about the truth, they're saying they know something, which they're not supposed to be able to do because of the way they're thinking about it, and it just like ends in a circular
Yeah, it's a
argument that
never-ending
makes no
loop.
sense. Yeah. Um, but I think they're not the reason, and I think we actually discussed it in my classes, and then I also in the essay that I read on skepticism. Um, that's not what they're trying to say. They're trying to say is, don't worry about it, but you do you like do what you need to do, but don't worry about the truth. Don't worry
Mm.
about being like absolutely correct. Just live your life. And I feel like that's what you're doing when you fail an experiment is like your hypothesis is wrong.
Yeah.
And you have two options. You have like three options, right? You get angry that it didn't work, and you get angry and it didn't work, and you say, you know what, I'm done with this. Two, you say, all right, it didn't work. Go back and theorize what like where you think you went wrong in your own thinking. Or three, maybe you had extra things, or you might know like you were melting a chemical at 65 degrees Celsius, and that didn't do anything, and then you're like, all right, let me turn it up to 75, and then that melts it. So you can like keep trying again because maybe something in your experiment was wrong. You think maybe another possibility, like in physics, I think would be a better example than chemistry, maybe, um, where you would think that something would do something but it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're like, all right, maybe some other thing would work. Actually, no, I think chemistry would work like that too, because
All the
like,
physical sciences are like that in a
yeah.
sense.
And then the first one is the worst one, and that's what the skeptics would dissuade you from doing
Yeah.
is getting angry about not finding the truth. They
Get
would
angry, go
say,
cry in a corner.
yeah, they would say, don't do that. Don't do the third option. If it still makes you happy and you're still like going at it and not ending in frustration, like the point where you end in frustration is what they don't want to happen.
Yeah.
In that sense, they're kind of like the cynics. Like they want you just to be happy. Like just, and I think actually the majority of Greek philosophers, that was the basis was to get happy. The difference was how do you become happy?
Yeah.
Um,
I think Edison said it beautifully when he was asked about his light bulb. when he made hundreds upon hundreds of light bulbs, and when asked about it, when he finally had a success, he said, "I didn't fail. I found 99 ways not to make a light bulb." That's that's the like same aspect where he didn't get frustrated at it. He kept going. He tried different things. And he found 90. He didn't look at it as a failure. He looked at it as 99 different ways it doesn't work, which is beautiful. I love looking at like how he thought of that.
I think that's what the skeptics are trying to. I feel like, well, I mean, that's not what they said, but then again, I don't really know what they said because I didn't live in their time period. Um, but I feel like that's kind of what they're going for. Is if that's something you want to look for, if you're trying to look for an answer to something, a question, they're not trying to dissuade you from looking.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to dissuade you from becoming so invested in something that you might not be able to answer. And then if you can't answer it, like that's what Piro had. He was trying to find answers to questions that he could not answer. And
Mm-hmm.
because of that, it really frustrated him. And he's like, this is not something that people should be doing. And that's why he started talking out against it. And then created the whole loop about not caring about things.
Yeah.
So, let's see. I don't know. Do you have any more thoughts on the skeptic viewpoint?
Other than I do like to a point, like I like how you brought up how it would really interest me, and it does because it's kind of like almost like a scientific viewpoint of it, of
Hmm.
like modern science. That's kind of the view I'm getting off of it.
Yeah, that's why I really want to talk to you about that one. Um, and this I believe the viewpoint um that my teacher really wanted me to emphasize or at least talk about, which I wasn't going to talk about originally. So there was a Chinese philosopher who is a Taoist, I believe is the correct term, named, I'm going to butcher this, Zhuangzi, Zhuangzi, I don't know. I think the Z is silent. I could spell it to you, but I'm not going to because it's long. And what his consensus seemed to be, and I read a paper comparing skepticism to his because they're actually pretty similar. Um, so he has the same kind of idea. You should not be worrying about these extra things, but instead of forgetting about the truth, he says more forget about what you currently believe. Like put yourself aside from your personal feelings towards the subject matter and just let your instincts guide you. Um, I think that's kind of it's kind of like a better version of and this is what the person in the essay said, kind of a better version of the skeptic thing because the skeptic thing kind of pushes you away from a certain subject.
Yeah.
Like if you can't figure it out, it says just stop. Whereas the Taoist is more, yeah, it's frustrating. It's gonna be frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Just like take yourself away from it for a second, and then what does your instinct tell you should do
Yeah.
next? Like maybe you should run a new experiment. Maybe you should do research on something else, or not something else, but like another way to look at the problem you're currently looking at. And follow your instinct. Or maybe you should just say, you know what, this was too big of a project. I can't find if I can't figure it out, and I'll just let go, like the skeptic would just say to do. Um, so what are your thoughts? Do you think that is a
I,
better version of?
yeah, it's an interesting approach to it. It's kind of like it's the whole idea of like removing yourself from a certain situation. Like you said, relying on instinct. It sounds, well, this is probably because Bagua is a Taoist martial art, just how Shaolin is a Buddhist art. So like I can kind of see I've heard this philosophy before through like martial art training and stuff, where it's you want like when you're doing your repetitions over and over, and when you're circle walking, and you're doing all this stuff, you want it to become instant. You don't want to think about it. You want to detach yourself and go with the actual flow of something. So it is an interesting point of view because you are more relaxed when you're using your instincts because you're not overthinking anything, which can result in problems. The biggest problems a lot of people have in science is they're looking at it's the hardest problem in the world. They're looking at it, and it's something completely simple. It's your overthinking. When you detach yourself from it, you're so invested in it, and just go to your friend and be like, hey, what am I not getting? And they're like, oh yeah, it's just this equals this. And you're like, how did I not see that? And then you realize you were so invested in this that it just your mind was clouded by that. So I do like what they're getting at. That.
Yeah, I have a similar thing. I was in one of my classes this semester. One of my friends was doing an assignment, and then I finished it really early. And he's like, "How'd you finish it?" And I was like, "Oh, I did these things." And he's like, "Wait, what? You did it that? Oh my God, that makes it so much easier." Like, and I think it's really like for anything in general, just like putting yourself above. Like, I mean, I don't want to say above, but I think that's the best word for it right now. It's like putting yourself above all your emotions
Mm-hmm.
and figuring out, all right, what do I need to do? I actually just wrote an essay on this, and this is kind of the difference between Taoism and skepticism. I wrote a paper on the skeptic viewpoint, I believe, or this maybe it was the Stoic viewpoint. Oh, I don't remember. It was one of them. I think it was the skeptic because it's similar to this. Where they had a virtue called magnanimity. I believe I said that correctly. Um, which is basically putting yourself above a situation and using your reasoning to figure out what you need to do next. I argued against that because I was thinking, because reason, I feel like reason is more of a constructed human, uh, or it's just a human construct more than something we're born with nature. I mean, obviously, there's some like ability to see the connections and figure something out, but I feel like the way the Tao stays it makes so much more sense. You know, just let your instincts. Like if your instinct is to think of things like in reason, then that's what you should do.
Mm-hmm.
If it's if your instincts are more emotional based, then that's what you should let them do. You know, take out the reason, and I mean I don't know if that's what they're arguing. I don't think it is, but I think that's kind of that's a better philosophy. It's like if what kind of person like we were talking earlier about your happy life, do what you want to do that makes sense for you. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what like an improvement on the Taoist thing, unless I read it wrong or there was more to it that I didn't get to, because I only read one person. Um, it's kind of just like letting yourself drift into the best spot that you can be in, depending on who you are, and then letting that decision guide you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Like it's yeah. You want I'm trying to think of how to word this. Like I've got it in my head. I'm just like it. I think it really just it does matter. It matters in the situation itself too. Like you have certain situations where it's better to let instincts go, and then there's other things where like I don't know. It's tough to like say. I
Yeah,
I kind of agree with where you're getting at though.
right, like the ability to put yourself like above something
Yeah, and
and look at it in like just one area, whichever area you like want to look at it. Like for you, um, like doing an experiment or like looking at it as an experiment type. Like if you're facing a random problem that approached you in real life, you might, extract yourself from all the things you're dealing with, mortgage, student loans, whatever, and you're like, all right, let's look at it this way. My hypothesis is I need to pay my
yeah,
food bills.
like
I
look at
need
the
a job.
facts. Yeah.
And like you set it up like you would set up an experiment, and then if it fails, you're like, all right, that failed. Bam, I have my next step.
Hmm.
So then what I would do is more like I would think ahead, thinking, all right, as a computer scientist, I need to think, all right, how is my user going to screw up my application? So what I think is, how am I going to screw up my life by making this decision?
Yeah.
And then go through all the cases, figure out which case is the best one, and say, all right, this is what I should do.
Hmm.
And then our friend, an English major, might look at it more in like,
A narrative.
yeah, like a narrative, kind of like, talk himself through it and be like, okay, what's this, and or maybe talk to somebody, and kind of like what we're doing now is flushing out the ideas and then being, all right, that's what I need to do.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think that's so what would you prefer? What do you think is better? Like I said, I actually prefer the Taoist over the skepticism in
I
terms of what it ends in.
Yeah, I don't know. I almost do it like almost like situation based. Like I was saying before, like some instances it's better to be instinctual. In other instances, it's better to be like, you know what, I'm not going to understand this fully, kind of thing. And like
Well, I mean I think sorry, I kind of cut you off, but
that's fine.
I think the Taoist, like it's your instinct. Like if your instinct is, look, I'm not gonna understand this, let this go, get out of there. If if it's something you're like, you know what, I am moderately okay at this, or I'm a little bit less than okay, but let's just talk about, let's put it in the realm of a course, because I think like a course kind of goes with this right now. What we're talking about. So like if you're in a course and you're addressing like an assignment, you can't figure it out. Skepticism says, or you can't get to the truth. You can't figure out what the answer is. Skepticism say, don't worry about it. You're done. It's all right.
Well, the Taoist would say
Relax.
go with your instincts.
Yeah, well, the Taoist would say, all right, just remove yourself from the situation. Forget about your grades. Forget about your other assignments. Forget about any social obligations you have right now. What does your instinct say? Does your instinct say, all right, I need to do this because I can, or I can't do this, so I need help, or I can't do this, I'm just not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Or, I can do this, but I might need some help, or I need to be alone in this room, like, one of the labs or something, because they have the resources I need, so I need to go do that immediately. And I think that's why I prefer the Taoist, because it depends on you. Whereas I feel like the skeptic is more, you gotta do this. This is your option.
Yeah, putting it that way, I think I guess definitely side more with a Taoist point of view.
Because I feel like the Taoist encompasses the skeptic view. Like you can say, screw it, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, it's still
Uh,
there. It's just it's more. I think the Taoist view is a little more personal. Like you said, it's more personal because it's more use your instincts. How would you react to this situation?
right, yeah. And because I mean, when we get down to it, everyone's different.
Yep.
You know what I
Just
mean?
like it's kind of like going full circle. It's what I brought up in the beginning. Everyone's ideal happiness is different.
Right, yeah, and that's why I think for our purposes, the Taoist view, so far, I think is the one that we can most agree with.
Hmm.
Because the good life is just, it's the same thing as, the skeptic one. And the stick one, the Epicurean one is the only one that doesn't say happiness because it says pleasure. But it's more like just, be happy and be yourself.
Yeah.
And then if the only difference between the skeptic and the Taoist is how you deal with the problems, and then the cynic is more where your happiness should be coming from.
Hmm.
Like, should it be, more want based or need based? Like we were saying about the pyramid. Like, I feel like a cynic would say is, hey, if you got the first one done, you should be happy.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, it comes from a different time where, like, especially in our society, it's fairly easy to get food, um, to get shelter because of like the systems we have in place. Whereas back then, I don't think I haven't done extensive research on their time period, but um, it wasn't as easy back then. So like they're kind of a different thing. But I think I would pick Taoist, and then we both seem to really resonate with the Cynic view, and
Yeah.
then Epicureans we just didn't really like. Like we agreed with them, like it
We
made
agreed.
sense.
We agreed with the sense, but for the most part, we agreed to disagree.
Yeah, but just because we agreed that pain, regardless of like, yes, having no pain is awesome, great, but pain and then pleasure, although they say it gets capped, we don't believe that. We believe, if you went through a lot of pain and you got something out of it, you should feel greater pleasure
Hmm.
than just getting something. Oh, quick thing, because I've been thinking about this for a while, and we can jump in right now. Just finish it off with the pleasure. Um, you know how you can have some games you you level up, like maybe Call of Duty, I think is a good example. Like every game you can unlock something. pretty instant, pretty fast. Or actually, any of the mobile games, bam, you get it, you're done. Or you can take a game like I'm trying to think of a game that you would. Oh, Jax or Jack and
Jack and
Dexter,
Dexter, yeah.
and then I'm just gonna use World of Warcraft because that's a more expansive version. Jack and Dexter, and I've played this game. I played it when you had it. Um, and I know Gerald, you who was watching this in like a couple hours, haven't played these games, but it's like a open world game where you go and like collect all these things. Um, and it's very difficult. You're not gonna get everything immediately. Um, you really have to work for it, and a lot of the things you really have to work for it. And I know Jay can attest to this. Like
Yep.
some of the things you need to get in that game are ridiculously hard to get. And then World of Warcraft, just because it's huge game. Excuse my language. Well, it's college.
They just censor it and everything.
Yeah, if I had the ability to do that, I'm not gonna cut it out because that would make no sense, and I don't have the bleep sound. It it has it took 8 months to get to the end level, and that was just the end level. And then there's like 8 tiers of things you can do after that.
Endgame.
Yeah, end game. Like there's so much in there, and so I think the thing that Epicureans didn't take into account, which might be something because it wasn't as rampant as it is in our culture, like the idea of instant gratification, instant pleasure instead of hard-won pleasure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I feel like that's something that, and again, I could have missed something in one of their readings that I just didn't see, or it could have been lost. That they kind of go more into that, or maybe a future Epicurean philosopher kind of does a take on that, which I didn't have. Um, but I feel like that's kind of missing. And then I don't know about you, but I feel like if I beat Jack and Dexter, which I didn't, and I got everything, I would feel so happy when I finished it. Like
It's worth it.
just playing like I have a Donkey Kong game for my 3DS, and like beating a level where you can get one thing, you can get puzzle pieces, and you can do a time trial. When I got all three the first time on one of the levels, I was so happy. It was so difficult. But just beating the level and get like it saying whatever, that's not appeasing to me at all.
Yeah.
Like I want to know that I put work into it,
Well,
and I got something out of it.
well, Pat, here's another example for me and you. I don't know if the professor will look at, but Pokemon. Look at that. What's the main goal of that is to finish the Pokedex. What are
Oh
me and
god.
you struggling to do right now, but it's still worth it when we get a Pokemon we haven't had. Completing that Pokedex.
Yeah, I know. That's even that's like a worse example because how bad that is. Um, the Pokedex. Oh my god. So just for brief background, the Pokedex currently contains, I believe, 729 Pokemon.
Somewhere around
Um,
there, yeah.
I have collected almost 100 of them. Actually, no, I've probably collected over. No, I've collected. I think I've collected over 400. No, wait, how many have I
I'm
collected?
at like
I've
350 right now.
Yeah, I've collected actually a decent amount of them, but a lot of them require older games, which cost a lot of money. Um, and hopefully eventually they'll re-release something. So that's the background of Pokemon, and I don't know if you know this, Cheryl, and I'm going to talk to you now because Pokemon. If you try to catch them all, that it's ridiculous. It is outrageous. The person in the TV show has barely caught all of them. He's caught like 20
Yeah.
over the course of 10 years. He's caught like 20 Pokemon. You get to see all the Pokemon in the anime, but they're not necessarily caught by the main character. Um,
It would be better for us.
Pokemon. Jesus.
It works though. It works.
No, it works. It's a perfect example. It is a perfect example of like if I got to the point where I completed that, I would feel so happy. I mean the other thing which you're not really talking about, and I'm not going to get into, is whether we should feel happy. I mean, did we just waste a ridiculous amount of time trying to get some like little ones and zeros into our into another thing of ones and zeros. Like that's literally what we dedicated hours or days of our lives to.
No, days.
Um,
Definitely days.
yeah, so I'm not gonna get into that, but
Yeah.
the idea is that if we did take days, we're hoping that we feel a little bit better than beating level on Candy Crush. Um, all right, so there is one left, and this is the one that I took from his book, Durable Goods, Pleasure, Wealth in the Virtuous Life. So if I screw anything up in this one, which I most likely will, he has the most right to yell at me. Um, so the Stoics is who we're talking about now, and their goal is a virtuous life. Um, it must have been the Stoics that I was writing about, because they were all about virtue in the thing I was writing about. So the idea behind the virtuous life, and um, no, yeah, it's totally Stoics because it wasn't the skeptics. The Stoics' idea behind the virtuous life, the virtue, and this is what I'm not even from this. I'm taking this from an essay. Um, a virtue is the ability to um, perfect a certain action or thing. They separate it into two distinct categories. There's a lot more, but I'm not going into those. Non-intellectual and intellectual. So non-intellectual would be like um, sculpting and stuff like that, I believe. Something that you perfected, but it doesn't have any intellectual value.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like some painting stuff can make you think, which delves into the intellectual, but it's more of an action-based thing, and that's kind of what they're getting at, I believe. And then there's intelligent things, so like moral code, and one of the things was like I was talking about the magnanimity, I believe it's called. That was one of the things, and I actually want to talk to you about that. So the idea is you live a virtuous life. Basically, virtuous is like you lived with honor. You do that, you don't do anything really bad. Good job, you win. And happiness. You get happiness because all
Because
these
you
things are
live
about
virtually.
happiness pretty much. It's just how you attain happiness. Um, as I said like 3 times before. Um, so this one is you obtain happiness by being good. And I define good as being or perfecting certain actions in your life.
Hmm.
And the reason they came to this conclusion is that that there's many virtues, I believe, is because there's still the option, like you can have a bad guy who is virtuous in some aspects, but still a bad guy. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example of someone who's like they have honor, but they're still a dick. And I'm just gonna say that because that's like what I'm trying to express.
Winter Soldier.
Um, what?
Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier?
Captain America. The Winter Soldier idea. He is honorable. It's not the best guy in the world, but he is honorable. He kind of turns into a
Okay,
hero.
I can't. We can't do this because I don't know if you've seen the movie, and I'm pretty sure he enjoys things like this. So we need to come up with a different example.
All right, fine. Worth a
I'm
shot.
pretty sure he reads these things, so I don't I don't
Yeah.
that'd be so horrible. He like watches this video before he grades it, and then he goes to see Winter Soldier right like he was planning to see Winter Soldier right after, and we
Yeah.
like
Hang
ruin
on,
the
I
whole
haven't
ending for
heard
him.
this video. Goes watch Winter Soldier.
Yeah, please turn this off now. Um, I'm trying to think of a good example from like a video game or a book or someone who's virtual like
Anti-heroes. Think of that.
yeah, I don't know enough. Like, do you have any off the top of your
Vegeta.
head?
DBZ.
Vegeta?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that actually makes sense because he's an asshole. Um, so in case you haven't watched DBZ, this is a guy who's I believe their planet got destroyed, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So he was a prince on this planet that got destroyed. And then he goes around the galaxy trying to find more people like him. He finds one. That guy is Goku, and he doesn't want to join him. And then he gets mad, and they fight. And I'm pretty sure Goku wins. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but I'm pretty sure
Yeah, he
Goku
wins.
wins. Who does?
Goku wins.
All right, yeah, Goku wins because Dragon Ball Z. And Vegeta eventually becomes part of his team, and he becomes virtuous in some aspects, but he still did a lot of bad things. Um, which doesn't really make him, you know, he hasn't had the best life. I don't know if he. I think he starts going on the path of becoming virtuous, and that improves his life because eventually he gets married and has a kid, and the kid goes into the future and saves them, or goes back into the past and saves them, or something like that. Um, so yeah, I think he's probably a good example of someone who is a bad man but becomes good because he starts getting these other virtues in him. I'm trying to think of another one. I don't think of like all the anime that I know that have like teams and like they get people who like should not be on a team. Um, but then again, I don't want to go into like a whole thing describing fictional things that did not occur. Um, you know what I should have done though? Started my timer on my phone and see how long we've been talking.
Yeah, we're over. We're definitely over an hour. It's almost 6.
Yeah, what time did we start? Like 4:30?
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
Okay. Which might be good because then maybe I'll cut the stoic thing.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I probably have to go through this and edit it. Um, yeah. So the I can't. We can't talk anymore. I need to go edit this now because if we're already over an hour, we started at like 4:30. That's what I was saying. When it got to like 5:30, I'm like, I think we're really approaching an hour, and I don't know how far we got.
Yeah, we just
So I think
started
I might
talking.
stop and start uploading it so I can mess with it later.
Yeah. Yeah, I just hit myself up against the wall too. So, you know, I
Did
cut
you
that out.
enjoy it though? Was it educational?
It was educational. Yeah.
I thought this was actually a really good discussion. I really liked the ones we had on the cynics
Yeah.
and the Taoists.
Hmm.
The Epicurean one was over way too quickly, but then we went back
We
to
made
it.
up for it.
We made up for it and we started talking about the yen, and then we just didn't give the Stoics anything, which might be a good thing because I didn't know where to go. So I'm gonna stop the broadcast now and see how much time it's on, and once it goes on to YouTube, hopefully oh god, it took me an hour video last time I did one was like 500 gigs, so hopefully it doesn't take too long.
Let's hope. Well, it's dinner time anyway, so.
Yeah, see you.